Hello, writers. Come write with me. My name is Michaela Greenwood. I create worlds for mind adventures. Welcome to my channel, Write with Michaela. I'm very excited to have you here on my channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the bell so we can go on this journey together. Today is story time, or the day of our chapter exchange. I give you a chapter by reading, and you send me a chapter to my email. If you're writing with me and you wish to exchange chapters, then send your chapter with written permission to writewithmichaela@gmail.com. I will post the email address at the end of the video and in the description below. I'm looking forward to reading your chapters, and I'm looking forward to reading your chapters to my viewers. Fun stuff. All chapters are writing prompts on the channel, whether they are mine or another writer's work or copyright protected material, and no one may use any part in writing their own stories. This story is PG-13, so if you're under 13 years of age, you need parental guidance. The story is in its rough draft stage, just as the last stories we've heard, just as the writing prompts we've heard. The title of this story is Elloni's Pride, and today we are reading chapter 23 out of book 3. If you would like to read along, then send to the email I stated earlier and request a PDF for the chapter. Make sure you are specific. Now let's start. Elloni's Pride, Gaining Freedom, Book 3, Chapter 23, Regrouping. Suddenly, Kosher could see around himself, and he could see their mountains. This startled him. Then abruptly he saw dragons appear beside him, and this also startled him. But then he saw his mom on a dragon behind someone in Cinder's group. He never dreamed he would see the day that his ma rode a dragon, but then he thought he should have offered to take her for a ride. He smiled at his mom. She smiled back and motioned with her head towards Kempton. She thought to him, "I'm not sure how you were included in the haze charm, but Kempton waited for his holder to send him some magic for us to be able to return." Kosher nodded his head. He thought it might have been the haze, but he knew he had not cast the charm. Here his younger brother had done it. Kosher felt the group had been invisible when Kempton had cast the charm, and he had been invisible when he entered the haze. Now they were home, so he needed to land and let the people out of his pouch because he didn't know how long he was in the haze. King Fate-Ride's group came out of the haze, and he immediately looked to the ground to see if there were any enemies or enemy dragons below him, and he didn't see any. King Fate-Ride shook his head to himself. He had warned his group about coming out in a battle, and that's exactly what happened. He needed to be careful about what he said in front of Brosser from now on. Who knew what Brosser thought when he said the charm for the haze? One of Cinder's group pointed northwest and shouted, "We are near Kalmesh Kingdom." Everyone landed, and King Fate-Ride's soldiers started taking account of everyone, including Valsaroth's group. Kala introduced King Fate-Ride to Valsaroth, and she caught King Fate-Ride up on what happened, including the gardens that Sir Bradley had helped get. Sir Bradley walked up to the small group. He smiled at Kala. King Fate-Ride said, "I understand you're collecting gardens these days." Sir Bradley motioned to Valsaroth. "They are for his people, as were 10 of the new baby dragons." "But Libya's arm lit up with the burrs, so they're supposed to be part of Elloni's Pride," stated Kala. Valsaroth was about to protest, but King Fate-Ride slightly nodded and said, "Sarvik recently showed me some more prophecy. I didn't like it, because it told of fighting 2 armies. But to overthrow King Damantade and get rid of the tyranny, we have to overthrow both." Valsaroth slightly nodded his head. "You do read, don't you?" King Fate-Ride said, addressing Valsaroth as they walked off to continue their talk. Sir Bradley could not believe his luck. He took Kala's hand in his, leaned down to kiss her hand. "My lady, it was a pleasure to fight beside you. I never thought your brother would let you out of his sight, but here we are. I still have duties." Kala blushed, and her heart surged. She smiled at Sir Bradley. "I have duties as well, and my family often takes care of Melee." They walked into Kalmesh Kingdom holding hands, and they each told each other of what had been happening in their lives, from looking for a new place to live, to flying out of the haze and catching a man from Cinder's group who was falling from his dragon, to night walking, to everything else. Kala had often looked at Sir Bradley, but she thought he was too busy to notice her. And then a lot of the girls her age had married, and several had children. Now she knew that Sir Bradley felt her brother kept her too close. But she and her brother had always been close. They had always helped their family protect Libya, and they lost their father, and they had both become linkers. So she explained that to Sir Bradley, and he understood. After a little while, they helped with the injured, and everyone planned to return to the mountains in the north. King Maltaron de Metade's soldiers returned, and the first thing King de Metade asked was what the trackers had found. The soldiers had forgotten the trackers and the witches, so they knew they had to send someone to get them. But they gave a summary of seeing hundreds of prints of people and many prints of dragons. Then they told of spotting the two maidens and how the maidens were lured to a battle, and how hundreds of enemy soldiers appeared before them, and how the enemy's linkers knew a great many charms. They told of the charms, including the last charm of shrinking and chaining their dragons to the ground. King de Metade was furious that they left their comrades for the enemies to kill. He more understood about leaving the trackers and the witches to help the seven that chased the maidens, and he understood not going back because the enemy would see and know, but the trackers could hide very well. King de Metade kept only minimal troops for the kingdom, and he sent the rest out to go see what happened to the chained dragons, their riders, and to retrieve their trackers and witches. As they left, he started planning with his advisors. They were going north to his brother's kingdom, and they were going to cleanse the land of these treacherous enemies from the north to the south. And then he and his brother could rebuild their separate kingdoms. He and his advisors decided that since his brother had some experience with these new linkers and their tactics, then it would be better to start up there and annihilate them, and then work on the linkers in the south, because it would be easier that way. King de Metade started giving orders to shut the kingdom down and to prepare for the trip. One advisor asked about the people, and he said they couldn't spend resources on protecting the people at this time, and the people could do what they normally did. King de Metade added that the people wouldn't be able to survive on their own, so they would find them right where they left them when they returned. Someone asked about the soldiers sent to Drevnor, and King de Metade said to call them home and tell Rashkalf to leave him, because Rashkalf would need to travel with them as well, especially since he had trained many young boys and girls in his craft that could handle his duties while he was gone. Sir Bradley used the haze charm to get King Fate-Ride's group home, but Browser and Valsarod's group waited for them to leave, and then they were leaving in the haze and hoping to find Valsarod's people and Cinder and Dacia. Once King Fate-Ride's group arrived in the mountains, he started organizing them to receive all of Valsarod's people. He knew Valsarath could betray them and give up their location for his people's freedom, but if Browser used the haze charm, Valsarath and his people might not realize where exactly they were on the land at first. Those thoughts hadn't been in King Fate-Ride's thoughts when they decided to split up, and he had spoken about their home in the mountains in the north, but he thought about them as he planned to incorporate all the new people. He thought, too, that it wasn't just Valsarod's group, but it was also the villagers that Valsarod's group had rescued. As he walked to his next task on his mental list, he looked at Javis and knew that trust and hope were better options. Still, he would make sure to train his people to defend themselves. As Browser's group came out of the haze and landed, they startled the rest of Valsarod's linkers that had traveled to the next cave. Kennek, one of Valsarod's sons, wanted to know what was going on, and if enemies were close behind them, but Valsarath calmed him and had him give his report first. Kennek told how they had landed and spread out to release the people so they didn't have a pile-up like before, and that had gone fairly smoothly, but they were still organizing the people in the cave. Balsaroth then introduced the rest of his sons and several linkers to Brosser, and Brosser to them, and he told what happened, including the red dust leaving Delthea, to which Dacia rejoiced because she was near enough to hear. Balsaroth then told of the battle and the fortune of having King Faterite's people come out of the haze and help them, and the plan to travel to where King Faterite was currently staying. The sons glanced at Brosser and Cinder, and they still weren't sure if they should trust or not. But Balsaroth told them that prophecy was coming to pass, and the new linkers and baby dragons needed to join Elloni's pride, at least for now. He ended by telling the prophecy that King Faterite had recently read, and how King Faterite was of the belief that all the people should learn to read. The sons still weren't sure. Balsaroth looked around for Kala, but she wasn't with them. So he just used the words she had given him, and he connected his sons and a few other linkers in the conference. He thought to them how they now knew how to go invisible and how to shrink people, so they could leave any time they wanted. Moreover, with King Faterite's people sharing so much, he felt they could trust. His sons and other linkers in the conference could see his points, and even one thought about Balsaroth rescuing Cinder before and not knowing the benefit. But because he had done that, King Faterite's people probably had an easier time of trusting them. Then Balsaroth stood before a large amount of his people, and he announced the plans to move. He ended with the delightful news that they had retrieved their gardens and would be able to place them down in their new place. He did warn that the plants would grow differently in the north, but there were tiny little people called tailors who would help them know what to do. It still took time to get ready to leave, and Brosser grew a little impatient, which made Cinder a little nervous. Soon Brosser's group came out of the haze. Unbeknownst to them, the travel time had been double speed of the normal haze charm. The people in the gardens aspirated at seeing all the unknown dragons above them. But Broman was coming out and directing the new dragons so they knew when to land and where to go, so they felt relief. Broman introduced himself to the new dragons, and he informed them that he and several other boys would be training them. Elloni also came out and introduced herself to all the dragons she had not yet met. Balsaroth and his sons turned the gardens over to Liberline and Sir Bradley for them to put down, and he went to a meeting with his sons and King Faterite. King Faterite gathered most all of the normal people, but he didn't have Sir Bradley or Broman, so he called Coulter to join. Balsaroth and his sons took in breaths of aspiration as they saw how young Coulter was. King Faterite also had Kala join because Aldemnia was not feeling well, and many hoped she wouldn't go into labor too soon. And Macy's family was watching Nayli because Sylvie and Vixie were attending other things at the moment. As King Faterite looked at Trenton and Kala, he decided that Kosher needed to join too, so he thought to him. Before King Faterite started the meeting and planning, Balsaroth mentioned how young the linkers were. "That is why we are hiding," replied King Faterite. "We've had a few battles recently because we heard King Daemantade, the brother in the north, was visiting his brother in the south. We, of course, only recently learned of the brother. Still, we took the opportunity to fight half his army." King Faterite continued and told them how they were regaining their dragons and how they suspected that with the death of an enemy soldier, then the dragon soldier road wasn't taking potions anymore. After King Faterite caught Balsaroth's group up, Balsaroth just shook his head. He didn't know how they would have fought if King Maltaron Daemontade's soldiers had slaughtered their dragons or made their dragons drink potions. After a few minutes, he asked if King Faterite wanted to meet their new linkers, and he admitted that they hadn't had any new linkers in 15 to 20 years. He briefly wondered aloud why their dragons hadn't laid any eggs during that time, although he understood why King Faterite's people didn't have any new dragons. When he wondered that, King Faterite introduced him to Sir Vic and told Sir Vic to show him to the books and let him pick one to read. King Faterite motioned to Balsaroth's son and told them they could pick a book too, or Sir Vic could hand them one. Balsaroth was a little nervous following the scribe and some soldiers into the caverns, but the soldiers held torches for light, and as they went The soldiers were also showing Valsarath and his sons some of the chambers that had room for their people and the villagers to stay in. Valsarath quickly realized that this wasn't the best of circumstances, but he agreed with King Faerite. They needed to bring the battle to King Damantade, then fly away in a misleading direction. They hadn't really planned to fight King Damantade in the south, but King Faerite had mentioned prophecy about defeating both, so for now he and his people would go along with the plans. Tomorrow morning they would all fly out and attack King Damantade in the north. Tonight they would lay the dead to rest and perform the needed ceremonies. Falstaff and his pride of 7 other dragons were back in the cave, south of the Underwood village, and they were finding places in the cave to rest. Suddenly, Falstaff looked up and around. He thought to his pride, "I remember my name. My name is Kelgor." He looked at the extra-large dragon, who was starting to show a dark, bright blue on the bottom. He said to him, "I remember your name as well. We called you Bunkle." The extra-large dragon raised his head and looked around. He thought a few minutes and agreed that the name sounded familiar and even felt good to him. The first 2 dragons that had been with Falstaff that Valstra had named suddenly remembered their own names. One was Dorset, and the other was Mark Lessel. Kelgor's son remembered his name Calgale, because that was what his father called him. So the group looked at the other 3 dragons, but they didn't remember their names yet. Kelgor thought to his group, "I know it is almost dark, but we need to find the other riderless dragons and bring them into our pride. I will think with the dragon named Kalstein. That may not be his name, but it is what Broman or the spirit called him. He can bring his pride of 4 here, and then Bunkle and I can fly to the west and search for the 5 dragons and see if they too will join us." Pride agreed, and Kelgor thought with Kalstein. Kalstein thought with his bride, and then they readily agreed. Then Kelgor and Bunkle left out of the cave in search of the 5 dragons. As they flew, Kelgor thought with Broman and let Broman know the name he remembered. Broman was ecstatic. He thought to Kelgor that he would remember more as time went on, and he was really glad Kelgor was off the potions. At that, Broman took the opportunity to visit Libya in her family's chamber. He wanted to give her the wood piece he made before tomorrow's flight. Sylvie was surprised to see him, but she welcomed him in, and she introduced him to the family of Linkers that was sharing their chamber for now. The extra people made Broman nervous, but Nymph was encouraging him in his ear. Broman had cloth wrapped around the wood, and he walked towards Libya. He held out the gift. Well, my pa did a lot of the work, but I did the parts I could, and I made this for you." "Go ahead and take the gift, Libya," said Sylvie. "Open it. We want to see." Libya smiled, embarrassed, but she took the gift and opened it. What she saw made her gasp in awe. "Oh, wow. It's beautiful. Look, Ma, in the background you can see an image of Elloni, and then my name is carved in." She looked at Broman. "This is beautiful. Thank you." Broman motioned to the wood. "Elloni's name is in the design of her scales." Libya looked closer, and she saw the delicate work. "This is really special." "Why don't you 2 walk out to the gardens?" suggested Sylvie. "I hear there are some new ones." Kosher sat up straighter, and he was about to protest, but Kala said, "I could go to the gardens too. I might find Sir Bradley." Sylvie smiled and nodded her head. Kosher looked at his mother. He wasn't sure if he should protest or not, but after the 3 of them walked out, Sylvie explained how Sir Bradley had already approached Kala and how Kala had rejoiced. Sylvie further told Kosher how Kala had often asked why Sir Bradley or no other boy seemed to notice her. But now she knew that her brother's protection didn't let Sir Bradley get close enough to say a word. Kosher sighed. "I didn't mean—" The Linker Joseph laughed a little. "You're a brother. That's what brothers do." He motioned to his sister and her husband. I wouldn't let Canel near my sister for a long time, but they got around me too. Kosher relaxed a little. Sylvie then suggested it was probably time for Kosher to find the girl as well, to which Kosher said, after these battles, not now. Everyone left it alone after that. After Kilgore and Buckle flew west over a river, they spotted a group of 10 dragons below them on the open plains. They thought together, and neither was sure if that was the group of 5 that they wanted, and the 5 had already gained more dragons, or if it was a different group. But they decided to land and see if they could think with the dragons. As they landed, several dragons raised their heads startled. Kilgore tried to think with the dragons to see if they had a leader. One dragon thought in turn that she remembered that Elloni was supposed to be her leader, but she couldn't remember ever meeting a dragon named Elloni. Kilgore thought in return they had all been on potions, and the longer they were off potions, the more they would remember, so the dragon would eventually remember Elloni. Kilgore also explained that he knew they had been on potions because of the black color on their backs. When he thought that, several dragons turned their necks and looked at their own backs, and it startled them. Kilgore thought to them that he could see some of the color on a few of them on their feet. The dragons turned their necks down to look at their feet, and several aspirated in thought. Kilgore then thought to them what he remembered and his current mission. He thought they were welcome to join his pride for now, and once they remembered or found their leader, they could join their correct pride. 7 of the dragons were quite nervous on the open plains and readily wanted to join, but 3 did not. So Kilgore thought his goodbye and safe journey to the 3. Then he and Bunkle and the 7 lifted up to find the 5 dragons. They turned north. The 3 dragons watched them go and then decided to fly farther south. It wasn't long before they saw trees ahead, and they knew they wouldn't be able to see dragons among the trees, especially as it grew dark or darker, so they landed. Then Kilgore received thoughts asking if he was Falstaff, and Kilgore thought his response of how a spirit had called him that, but he just remembered his name. Once Kilgore thought his name, the other dragon remembered Kilgore and thought that he suddenly remembered his own name. The dragon thought his name was Castian. At the same time, both dragons thought that Castian was Candy's brother. Then Kilgore confessed and thought how the enemy had killed Candy and how he wanted revenge, but he recently learned that the enemy had poisoned him, and he had fought for that enemy. Castian thought, as you think that, I remember flying with you, and your son and your daughter, but I've been in darkness. Recently I had thoughts not to drink potions and to fly away, but I didn't know what I was flying away from. The 4 other dragons with Castian joined in the thoughts, and then Kilgore thought his mission to gather them, then to attack in the morning. Castian's group agreed, and then they all flew off to Kilgore's current cave. As they flew, Castian asked Kilgore in thought if Kilgore knew where his son and daughter were, or where his own 3 sons were, and Kilgore answered in thought that, so far, he had only found his son. But when they flew against the enemy tomorrow, Castian should think to his sons to fly away and not to take any more potions. The 14 dragons knew these were sad days, and they hoped to right the wrongs that it seemed they had participated in helping cause, even though that had never been their intentions. In the early morning, the female dragon that had thought she belonged to Elloni's pride raised her head and thought to the dragons, my cousin, Simonsa, and her husband, Kalfar, laid the egg that was to be Elloni. How can I think that I'm part of Elloni's pride? Kilgore thought to his pride that they would remember more as they were off potions, and he encouraged them to try to remember their names. And he encouraged the female to try to think with Elloni and see if she had hatched. The female didn't remember her own name, and thought again how it would be impossible to be part of a pride of an egg. Kilgore sighed to himself, and he explained in thought that he remembered his son as an adolescent, and his son had only molted twice, or shedded his scales twice, but now he could see his son was a full adult-sized dragon, which meant he had molted at least 1 or 2 more times. Kilgore concluded in thought that they had been in darkness a long time, and he once again encouraged the female to try to think with Elloni. The female asked if Kilgore was sure she would remember her own name. Kilgore answered, after explaining who Broman was, that Broman had thought to them that only one dragon they knew of hadn't remembered. The female thought she would wait to remember her own name first. Kilgore thought to her, maybe your sister remembers your name. After that, he left the dragon to her thoughts because they would be flying again to the kingdom in the north after they flew down and ate some grass. Okay, writers, that is the end of chapter 23. It was quite a long chapter. A lot has happened. You can see how the dragons are thinking beings in this story, so you might understand why King Damantade poisoned his own dragons. You might not agree with what he did, but that's okay. We don't have to agree with the antagonist or what the antagonist does. Leave a comment on the dragons forming a pride. And if you were a female dragon, right, you had to put your person into the shoes of these characters. If you were a female dragon, would you think to Elloni or to her mother before you remembered your own name? Hello, Samosa. I remember that you're my sister. I don't remember my own name. How would that conversation go? You know, as writers, we get to play with these kinds of things. Leave a comment on if you were King Faterite. Would you try to incorporate all these new people into your kingdom? Or would you just agree to meet at King Damantade's in the north for battle? Leave a comment on if you are a brother and you keep your sister in arm's length. Leave a comment on if you are a sister who has an overly protective brother. Fun stuff. You take things from real life and you weave them into your story, and it just makes a lot of fun. Join me Tuesday for Vocabulary, Part 23 of Your Cave. Join me Friday for Chapter 24 of Elloni's Pride, Gaining Freedom. Like I said before, this book has 27 chapters, so we only have 4 more chapters because we have 24, 25, 26, and 27. 4 chapters to read. Our next story will hopefully be ready by then. Visit my website bymichaela.com. Read some character bios. If you read some, then leave a comment on which ones you have read. All your comments will help us start conversations and build our community. Keep all comments respectful and remember that someone else's perspective can help you with your writing. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe and the bell so we can continue to write together and other people will have a higher chance of finding this video and this channel since your likes will push the video out to a greater audience. Thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate your participation. If you know someone who would like this video, then please share it with them. This is Michaela with Write with Michaela. Bye for now.